8 days to the hotly contested 2017 general election, the body of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission ICT manager Chris Msando would surface at a forest in Kikuyu, Kiambu County.
In our mind as a commission, the only issue is who killed him and why. And that's a question that must be answered.
Msando was the face of technology at the IEBC, the man in charge of the data, electronic register, KIMS kits and the IEBC portal to which results were to be relayed.
A system that is simple, verifiable and auditable.
His gruesome murder, a week to a high-stakes general election, raised political temperatures and heightened tensions in the country, sparking fears of more ominous developments in that election.
That no effort was made to camouflage this killing as an accident shows the determination of the killers to send a chilling message that they will stop at nothing to ensure the outcome they desire.
That then tells you that no one is safe, in essence, whatever capacity you're holding.
I put in my best team, and if the need be, we'll seek support from elsewhere.
5 years on, the much publicized investigation that promised to bring to book his killers has seemingly gone cold. But the country appears to have moved on, with yet another election now in the offing.
From as far back as August 2017, the police department was aware that a personal assistant to a senior IEBC official had been tasked with trailing the movements of Chris Msando's motor vehicle. The police department was further aware that Msando had feared for his life and made several reports at the Central Police Station. The National Intelligence Service, headquartered in Muthaiga, had briefed that the men who waylaid, kidnapped, tortured and murdered Chris Msando were in fact with him at the entertainment joint on Koinange Street. But even those 3 leads have never been investigated. I am Brian Obuya. Logging out Msando begins now.
Just wait.
Christopher Chege Msando was the man who oversaw key ICT processes, including the audit of the Register of Voters and the Data Center project. Chris Msando became the man to watch in the election that deeply relied on technology. Essentially, he was the project manager for the electronic transmission of results for the 2017 presidential elections, streaming in from the 47 counties. Msando was one of the few people with almost unfettered access to the highly sensitive results transmission system introduced by besieged French company Safran Haute Morpho that has since changed its name to Edemia. The company had been single-sourced by the IEBC to deliver the Kenya Integrated Election Management System KIMS in a 6 billion Kenya shillings contract. The Haute Morpho deal itself was so controversial that the Parliamentary Accounts Committee on 24th April 2019 blacklisted the company and recommended its total ban from Kenya for at least 10 years. Msando was described as an honest man, transparent in sharing the loopholes and the strongholds in the ICT system that was going to become the do or die of the 2017 polls. In May 2017, his boss James Mohati was sent home on allegations of not cooperating with the auditors supposed to audit the ICT system. Msando took over as the manager of the ICT infrastructure, the IEBC, and with that, his role became more pronounced.
This is a public matter.
Chris was now the man in the Kenyan media, assuring the public of the integrity of the then upcoming elections and the proficiency of the later to become a doomed and damned electronic voting system.
In this election, the results management is going to be very transparent, very open, and very accountable.
He was not mincing his words. It was clear that he understood his job.
We invest in technology heavily because of trust, not because of anything else. It's just because of trust. Can you imagine Dibal Governor Kidero running elections, will Sonko agree to those results? If Governor Kidero's people run those elections here, it's because of trust. We don't trust each other, therefore.
If he's running as an incumbent?
Yes. And that is what happens in the United States.
Will you trust the particular results?
Well, that is the question we need to be asking ourselves, all of us here.
The ICT department would later be placed back in the hands of Muhati. His suspension had come to an end informally. The commission that publicly sent him home somehow did not tell the public about his silent return. Everything will go quiet at the anniversary towers until Friday, July 28, 2017. Msando did not go back home. From there, everything was happening so fast. On Saturday 29th, his body was quietly registered as unknown at the city mortuary at 11:25 a.m. This even as his family went about the business of finding Chris. Then on Sunday, the commission officially released a statement declaring that its ICT manager Chris Msando was missing. Midday Monday, the commission officials and Msando's family were flocking the city mortuary where his body had by now been identified.
We learned with shock the killing and murder of our employee, Chris Msando. There's no doubt that he was tortured and murdered. I know post-mortem will be done. In our mind as a commission, the only issue is who killed him and why. And that's a question that must be answered.
It was gloomy. I mean, we were looking at each other, not knowing, of course, what happened. And you recall a couple of days we couldn't hear from him, and it added to the tension. And eventually, you know, when we were told there is a body there, then we had to rush there. We went and city mortuary. We saw it. It was a gloomy day for us, you know. Some of us shed tears at that time.
On the cold cement slab at the city mortuary was the body of the 44-year-old ICT guru, just hours old at the dead man's facility. His body had been found in a forested area in Kikuyu, Kiambu. Msando's body had 3 deep cuts on his hand, still bleeding, marks around his neck. A post-mortem examination later indicating that the father of 4 had been tied up and strangled to his death by powerful hands. In the morning, he was on NTV's AM live show dissecting the electoral process before appearing on KTN News at 6 p.m. through 7 p.m.
Mitambo iko sawa kabisa, nangoja tarehe 8 mwezi wa Agosti.
Mashini zote ziko zimetayarishwa.
Kila kitu iko sawa, sisi tuko ready.
This interview with Houghton Irungu, the executive director of Amnesty International, is not just important because he's a human rights defender, but he was among the very last people who saw Msando alive.
The death of Chris Msando, personally wounded me because I was with him on a breakfast show that morning. The night he died, I actually was in a studio, and it probably was an NTV studio. And I listened to this man very comprehensively and very clearly explain the protection that they were taking to ensure that the election results were not hacked, and essentially what their digital security strategy was. To have him killed in the way that he was killed really deeply wounded me. And it, of course, it horrified the nation.
Actually, you recall at that time we had the actual director was away on leave, and we had just asked him to step in, and so that's why we had very close discussions and working relationship with the late, and personally it touched me as his chair. It was really touching.
With Msando now a dead man, focus had shifted to the one night he was away from home. The Directorate of Criminal Investigations, at the time under Ndegwa Muhoro, promising that no stone would be left unturned in this high-profile investigation that hit global headlines.
I want to say that we are professional investigators. They'll follow or pursue all leads available and possible to get to the bottom of this. I'll put in my best team, and if the need be, we'll seek support from elsewhere. But I'm very confident that we have a team that is able to unravel this. They have done it before. I don't see why we can't do it now. Otherwise, I urge Kenyans not to speculate.
In a couple of hours of what police say were intense investigations, they had come up with a theory and a possible motive behind the heinous abduction and murder. It was at this point that the name of one Caroline Marianne Wairimu Ngumbu would feature prominently. And for the first time, it would be established that it was not just Msando who had been brutally taken out, but so had a young woman. Police painting the picture of a crime of passion, despite the evidence pointing to other directions. Police would eventually give a detailed chronology of the night Msando and Caroline Ngumbu were murdered, relying heavily on the CCTV cameras that had been captured at the Integrated Communication Command and Control Center at the police headquarters. The narrative showed that on Friday at about 8:50 p.m., Msando left his office at Anniversary Towers and was spotted in the company of two other persons, a male and a female, at Club 7 on Koinange Street. Msando's vehicle was captured by the cameras at the Uhuru Highway Haile Selassie Avenue roundabout at 2:24 a.m. His vehicle would again be captured a minute later at the Bunyala Road Uhuru Highway roundabout heading towards Mombasa Road. In both instances, the vehicle had two occupants, a male and female, in the front seats. 10 minutes later, at about 2:30 a.m., the vehicle was captured along Mombasa Road towards the Nyayo Stadium, now with only a male occupant in the driver's seat, heading towards the city center. The sun visor dropped and not matching the frame of Chris Msando. This widely gave rise to findings that Msando and his girlfriend Caroline Ngumbu were forced into another motor vehicle at a dark spot near Mata Hospital before being murdered somewhere. At 2:47 a.m., Msando's vehicle was captured along the Ring Road-Juja Road intersection towards Thika Road, being driven by an unidentified person. And this was the last time his vehicle was spotted before being found abandoned in Roysambu at midnight on Sunday. On Monday, Chris Msando and Carol Ngumbu's bodies were found at the city mortuary. The duo had been kidnapped, tortured, murdered, and later dumped in Kikuyu in Kiambu County sometime between 3 a.m. and 11 a.m. that Saturday.
The murder and the killing of Chris Msando, who was a critical player within the electoral process, remains a dark chapter in our electoral history. And it was regrettable, it was unfortunate, it was criminal. And we must keep away from those kind of occurrences. Because elections in this country are almost a matter of life and death. And therefore anything that indicates that anybody is trying to compromise elections should completely be avoided.
Elections in Kenya is a do or die activity, as most people recognize, and many of them say so. And because you are overseeing an election that is viewed to be a do or die, anybody involved in that process will always feel vulnerable.
Tucked away in Gashie, Kiambu County, the family of Marianne Wairimu Ngumbu is opening its gates to us, their first media such interview since the gruesome murders 5 years ago. And for the first time on national television, the family reveals how it almost lost its two daughters to Chris Msando's killers. A few changes have happened here, including the repainting of this gate. But many things remain the same, and they may never forget the sorrow of losing a loved one. Buried at her father's home, here lies the final resting place of Caroline Marianne Wairimu Ngumbu, Here lies the shattered dream of a young girl who looked forward to becoming one of Kenya's greatest nutritionists. Her mother says it is still a heavy burden for her.
Tangetaka kukose wala hata makelele, hakunataka hata makelele. Na ukimwambia kitu anatii. Kwa sana sana babake alikuwa anamtii sana. Hata tuliguswa sana.
Caroline Ngumbu wasn't always Caroline or Caro, as she was fondly called. Her mother says her official name was Marianne Wairimo, but she and her friends fell in love with the name Caroline, and it became widely used than her real name. Sarah says her daughter was brought up well in a church setting.
Shule alikuwa anafanya vizuri. Caro hajawahi kosa kwenda shule. Hata angefukuzwa tuseme shule amefukuzwa na nini Caro, tulikuwa tunafanya bidii tunatuma ndiye asikuja. Alikuwa hata analia akisikia atatumwa nyumbani ya Caro.
A few kilometers from her mother's home is Jedida Wanjiku, or just Shiko, Caroline's elder sister. If there is someone who knew almost everything that was going on in Caroline Ngumbu's life, it was Jedida, her sister.
We grew up very well, not having any issues as sisters. She was loving, God-fearing. You know, there were like wale wasichana hata shule anafuatilia vizuri CU, alikuwa chair lady. Church, same way. She was playing part in youth service, and she was a nice girl.
The sister says it is during the period she was in Karen at the Kenya Medical Training College that Caro met Chris Msando. Their meeting was that informal. They exchanged contacts and became friends, later to elevate their friendship into something deeper than that.
Caro akatoka KMTC na alitumwa Naivasha Hospital. When she was staying in Naivasha, they would even call me with Chris. We were in Naivasha pamoja. Angempik, wakuje Nairobi. Wakifika Nairobi, maybe we meet for a few drinks ama coffee. Then I think hiyo ndio relationship yao, najua ilianzia hapo. Na wakakuwa watu wako pamoja. If it's on a weekend, I'd call Carol, not pick, same way Chris used to do. I'd call Chris and nampatia hata simu yake, we talk. When they were going for trips na yeye. Yeah. But hata yeye nilimuuliza, if you know deep down your heart, huyu mtu ako na familia, ujue unaweza kuwa ukikosea. And she told me, no, Chris, ako always available.
The mother says she knew nothing about Caro's relationship with the IEBC manager. It was the last thing she would have expected.
Hakuna kitu nilikuwa najua. Unajua ni wasichana wako na mambo sawa wao. So sikujua kitu yeyote kuhusu huyo mtu. So wakati niliona, hata nikasikia, wale waliniletea hapa ripoti wakaniambia ule mtu alikuwa amepotea. Sasa si alikuwa ametangazwa amepotea. Wamepatikana, sijui wameuawa naka. Hata sikuamini. Nilikaa sana bila kuamini. Nilikaa sana hata bila kuamini.
Unangoja hata yeye mwenyewe akuja ajiseme, unajua hainihusu in any way. So nilikuwa nangoja juu pia walikuwa wanaongea na mama. Venye unaweza share kitu yako, walikuwa they used to share things. No. Me I expected her akuje amwambie kivi yake, but si mimi. Mimi nikaona bado hajamwambia, hamwambii. Nikamuuliza una plan kuambia mama lini? Akaniambia we just take time.
The relationship between Msando and Caro had lasted for about a year before the tragedy struck. On the material day, just like in many other occasions, Caro had called Shiko and asked her to join them later that evening for a couple of drinks and merrymaking. Chris, as they called him, was coming over, and so were his friends. Chris and his friends were well known to Shiko. She had met them many times before.
Walikuwa wanapatana na yeye, akaniambia Chris alikuwa anaingia meeting. No, Chris akitoka meeting alimpigia akamwambia kuna meeting nyingine inaingia jioni. So aende pahali amngoje. Na kuna rafiki yao pia nishaiwapata pamoja, colleagues wao. So kuna huyo colleague wake mmoja, they used to hang around na yeye sana. Na akamwambia Carol is in town, enda umkalishe kabla nimalize meeting. Na hata Carol akanipigia akaniambia, "Kwani umefika wapi? Ufiki?" Nikamwambia ngoja nakuja, acha nimalizane na client nakuja.
But that evening something, almost everything went terribly wrong.
Mimi nikakaa, simu ikaisha charge. Usha charge, sasa mimi acha nitafute charger. Nikienda kuwekewa charger haicharge. I don't know what happened with my phone. Haikucharge. Sasa nikafikiria nitoke hapa niende hadi town na simu yangu iko off. Sikuwa na cash. So nilikuwa nilipia hadi na simu kama ni cab. Nikasema itakuwa hassle. Let me just go home.
On the same Friday they went?
Yeah, the same Friday. So they were actually waiting for me. Na hata venye Chris alifika, hiyo ndio time yenye sasa tuliongea nao ya mwisho. Ndio aliniambia hata Chris amefika. Uko wapi? It was around what time was it? Can I recall that? Around it was about 9 there. 9ish to 10. Yeah. Sasa hivyo ndo niliwamiss. Nilimiss kikao yetu na wao. Kama ninge show up, ningekuwa hapo. Juu mimi simu ilinisaidia ikazima.
She retired to bed, but more was to come.
Ikafika asubuhi. Asubuhi nikampigia simu. The first thing I did, vile niliamka, nilimpigia. And the phone was off. I thought, maybe hata alifika late. Simu ikazi. Pia ni issue ya charger ama anything. Nikakaa. Lunchtime nikapiga. Jioni nikapiga. Sasa hapo ndo nikaanza kuwa uneasy. Kumpigia mteja. Now on Sunday, all along, mimi hata siangalia ati news. Ati nione breaking news, Chris is missing, you know. Sasa hapo ndo walianza kusema Chris is missing. And sure, ningejua even that's why my sister's phone was off. Now I had to call Chris. Kumpigia, simu yake ikaenda mteja pia. Sasa hapo nilitense. Nikashindwa ni nini. Nikakaa nikiwajaribu. No, hakuna mtu anajua hii story isipokuwa mimi. Mimi ndio nilimit Chris. Carol aliniintroduce kwa Chris. Sasa nitaenda kuambia wazazi wangu aje. Ama nitawapigia niwaambie Carol simu yake imekuwa mteja na mtu mwenye walikuwa na yeye iko mteja pia. You know. Now ilikuwa confused. Ndio now on Monday decide Monday sasa nitaenda kuambia at least hata kama it's my mom ama my another cousin of mine hata ndio alinipeleka huko. Monday sasa nikaingia online. Kuingia online nikaanza kuona Chris is missing. Kuendelea nikaona Chris is found with an unknown female body next to him. I screamed. Nikalia, nikapiga nduru juu. Sasa sikuwa na la kufanya. Nikajua direct, that's my sister. Even without asking, without anything, nilijua tu. That was my sister.
Unlike her daughter, Sarah was following the news. The prayerful woman she is, she said a prayer for the random family man whose disappearance was all over the news, praying for Msando's safe return to his family.
Ni maombi tu nilianza kuomba. Baadaye sikujua ati mtoto wangu amehusikana na huyo mtu. Sasa nilikuja kustuka, hata mshangao mkubwa sana ilinishika.
And my mom was like, "Woi, Aki, sio pia ni anakaa tu ni baba ya mtu. Aki Mungu tu mwaloketi na familia yake. Aki vile vitu zina happen huku siku hizi, bad news. Aki Mungu tu mrudishe kwake." Na hakujua kuna uhusiano ilikuwa ama anything. Lakini she prayed and said, "Woi, Mungu mrudishe nyumbani salama."
Jedida, not sure what to tell the mother, picked a close friend and went to city mortuary. All this while her parents are not aware that their daughter is missing, let alone that she could have had anything to do with the poll agency official.
We were to pay viewing fee for about 500 or so. My friend paid na wakaandamana hadi na yeye huko ndani. Kufika nilisikia rafiki yangu ameanza kupiga nduru. Karo, Karo, Karo. Mimi nikajua basi sister yangu. At this time hakuna mtu anajua. Hata media bado wanasema wanamweka tu like unknown. Hakuna mtu alijua ni nani, hakuna mtu alikuwa anajua kenye ina happen.
But the most difficult assignment yet awaited Shiko.
To break the news nyumbani. My dad anaendanga kazi, my mom pia kwa nyumbani, she's a farmer. Now nilishindwa nianzie wapi na nimalizie wapi.
After it was confirmed that Caro had died together with Msando under similar yet unclear circumstances, the family says a lot was going on. The village was talking and so was social media, treating the family to its first and unprecedented levels of cyberbullying.
The following day, no after kuamka, message za WhatsApp, sijui hata watu kwenye wanapata namba zangu, Facebook, Instagram. It was terrible. Yani, I was fungulia those things and I was just crying. I had to pull down all my social media accounts, my Instagram, my Facebook. Nikazi pull down because singe stand.
The family of Carol Ngumbu says they may have healed, but they are yet to move on. Her mother says she still questions why her daughter's death was treated with little regard, yet the 21-year-old was, according to her, not the target of the highly coordinated murder.
Now, after we went and they recorded our statement, since then, we've never heard from them. Nothing at all, till to date.
Sasa wakati wa serikali, kwa maana tulisikia ule upande mwingine waliwaangalia. Sasa sisi na walikuwa, sasa ndio nilisema hapo kweli mnyonge hana haki. Maana sisi hakuna mtu alitufuata. Na wale walifuatwa na wakafanyiwa mambo yao yenye walikuwa wanataka. Wakafanyiwa, sisi tuliwekwa tu hilo. Kwa giza, yani tuko bado kwa giza.
5 years on, there are still no answers from the DCI or any other state agency on what really happened on Friday, July 28th, 2017.
Surely with a professional police service and a professional and effective government, we would have some closure on this matter. But I think his widow remains completely bereft by not even knowing who it is that took the life of her husband. And the nation does not know who took the life of an elections official that was handling a very sensitive part of the elections.
You need not be an expert like myself. It bothers anyone, specifically because this particular state has the muscle to investigate adequately. We have seen them flex their muscles here and there, and we wonder why we would pick and choose when to flex. If this muscle is available, then why is it not being applied, standardized, in a standardized manner? Because then Msando is like any other any other Kenyan. And we know for a fact that based on the Constitution, Article 26, everyone should enjoy their right to life. And if that particular person could not enjoy, then it means that anyone cannot enjoy. Further, given that particular way in which this person lost their life and the way in which the state has handled that particular case, then you lose trust in the state, which is the holder of the duty to offer full enjoyment of the right to life as well as security, and then it cascades to the judiciary, because then we see that in essence nothing will ever be done, and yet we know that justice should be our shield and our defender.
We must prepare for accountability, for holding to account all those involved in electoral offences. That will send a clear message that we won't tolerate any interference with the integrity of our electoral process.
As most players question the existence of an investigation and, if any, the pace of it, the police say the probe is still active.
That's part of our past, and we keep on learning from our past. For us, the case of Msando was a very sad incident. Is actively under investigations by the DCI, so I can't really go into that. But for me, all I can say is just to offer, in terms of reassurance, to offer the commitment of the National Police Service to IBC, its officials, all contenders, and all Kenyans at large.
Msando's family is still too traumatized to speak about the issue, saying in previous interviews that they have left the killers in the hands of God.
Mawaj sirkand Kenya odhiero wanga aonge tak sirkal ma Kenya gowach ana dwaro ngabna no mark ngat maneno nego Chris oteri court Chris owe nyithindo matindo to nyithindo ko thagore to gin to nyithindgi chiemo maber. Chris no kokoso no kokwali Kenya. Chris no dhi somo sombe ne gindiko Chris ni Chris odhi kanyo mondo odhi oti maber bosomo sombe to ndiko gik manene gidwaro ne Chris otimo nigi ang'o mane inego Chris to kose ka ne gineno ni Chris rach ne giriembe ne ginege nang'o ne giriembe to oduogo na an wuon go mahere kata rach.
In Gashie, Carol's mother, a peasant farmer, is opening up on the double tragedy that befell this humble family in a rural village. They say they not only lost a daughter, but also felt abandoned and neglected as senior government officials and other leaders directed all their attention to Chris Msando's murder. His widow, Eva Buyu, was later appointed to sit on the board of the Export Processing Zone Authority, EPZ. Carol's family says all they want is justice for the young woman who appears to have paid the ultimate price in a war that was not hers.
Kwa maana nilisomesa huyu mtoto wangu hata loan zingine nilikuwa nimekopa nililipa baada yake kufariki. So nilikuwa na hard time tukiwa na baba yake sana. Juu tulikuwa tumejitolea kabisa. Sasa kutoka hapo mimi ningetaka serikali inifuatilie, na wajue huyu alikuwa mtoto, na hata kama angesoma hata angeenda na asaidie tena serikali ama asaidie wananchi at least ile gap niko nayo. Kwa maana hata ile swali yangu ni vile nimekuelezea hapo bereni, wale vile waliongea walisikika na mimi sijasikika hata pahali, ama nisikie mtu ameniambia Mama Karo hivi na hivi tutakufanyia hivi na hivi.
I think Brian, our biggest concern here is even about Msando's family, because alikuwa na familia and they were young, and I believe one day the kids will ask, Daddy alienda wapi? They also need answers as much as we need them. At least the government condoled with them. The mother got a state job, and as much as they need answers, they're in a better position now, I think so. And here there is Carol. Carol and Chris, they were different people. And I think maybe that's why waliwatreat wakiwa watu tofauti. Because Carol didn't work for government. Maybe that's why. I'm not saying, maybe that's why. And it's so unfair. Because pia Carol ni mtu. She's also human.
Right to life is right to life, irrespective of who you are. And that's why we have Prevention of Torture Act, we have Persons Deprived of Liberty Act, because then we are saying whether you are a capital offense person who has been charged and you're serving life, you still enjoy the right to life, right? You still access health services, you still get to see your family, you enjoy a few rights that the law in itself can never take away from you. So by extension, when we are looking at the murder of Carol Ngumbu, and that no one talks about it, and that no one is angry enough or strong enough to even address it, is a question that we need to be very concerned about. It is sad, further, that we even pull the sex or gender card when it comes to someone's life. That in itself is a question that then we need to look into.
Msando had exuded confidence that electoral loopholes in the electronic system had been sealed and that no ghosts would wake up to vote on the election date.
What we are putting in place as a commission is to ensure that we identify and mitigate all the risks that are out there in terms of technology and breach of systems. We are alive to the fact that those breaches are happening right now.
The death of the father of four threw the credibility of the general election into question and raised political temperatures.
Tunataka tujue IBC kama watahakikisha uchaguzi unaokuja utakuwa wa haki, kwa sababu wakiiba safari hii Kenya haitakubali.
At the center of the murder investigation was a heated political anger, featuring among other players Gatundu South Member of Parliament Moses Kuria. Immediately news of the death of the ICT manager Chris Msando broke, focus sharply shifted to a Facebook post made hours earlier by the legislator. It is during Msando's disappearance that Kuria posted an image of the IEBC official's car that was found parked in a Roysambu estate.
I've had to live with a barrage of innuendos, accusations and suspicions that linked me to the disappearance and the death of Chris Msando.
In the said post, he described the late electoral official as an idiot who was busy enjoying a sweet time with a female companion at a time when Kenyans were busy looking for him. That Facebook post caused an uproar and put the lawmaker on the spot. The post has since been pulled down, but it forced the legislator, who is now running for governor in Kiambu, to break his silence.
We called the OCPD of Kasarani police station even before we went to the scene, and we told him, Bona OCPD, we have received this call from these people that this vehicle that has been circulated as missing has been found. What we have encountered is daily accusations, and you know, we are human, and myself, I'm a leader, and I'm a parent, I'm a father, and it's not good. And I want this statement to put a stop forthwith to any further association of myself with this particular issue.
The opposition painted a picture of an election that had been electronically stolen through an algorithm.
Despite our grave concern about the implications of this murder and other recent developments, NASA would like to re-emphasize and reiterate its commitment to participate in the general election on the 8th of August.
And to the polls they went. The second most controversial election in Kenyan history was taking place. With the technology whose lead manager had been assassinated at work, the opposition would later argue that the Chebukati-led commission had compromised itself and the system, leading the country to a long-standing and intense litigation that sought to set aside the election results. IEBC and Uhuru Kenyatta's lawyers facing difficult questions from inside the chambers of Kenya's highest court.
There were no security features required on these forms?
It is not a requirement of the law.
It is not a requirement of the law?
No.
But did these forms have security features?
Yes.
So meaning if they had, they all should have?
abundance of caution. The commission, out of abundance of caution, are the ones who designed the security features.
Okay.
Yes. And my Lord, we have explanations. It's just that there wasn't enough time. Because when you scan a copy, you can actually lose some of the security features. But what I'm saying
Mr. Mita, before
is
you
that
move,
the forms
Mr. Mita,
34... Yes.
Before you move.
Yes, my Lord.
How do you explain Nyali in that form? And the serial number, or lack of it?
Yes, there is no serial number, but that's admitted.
What does that mean?
If I had time, I would take instructions. But if you go to the next column...
My question is this.
Yes.
Where a candidate, where a voter collects the 6 ballots?
Yes.
Because the assumption is we will be given all 6.
Yes, you're given all 6.
And you want to vote for only one candidate.
Yes.
Where do the other 5 ballot papers go? It's a very simple question.
That's what I answered the ladyship. That the law, and I think the regulations actually make it quite clear, that even having been given the 6, and even with the color coding that the ballot boxes have, and the ballots themselves have, room is still created for what your ladyship correctly called the stray ballot, which is a correct ballot placed in the wrong box. Now, when you look at the regulations and you decide to do your ruling, you will find that those stray ballots are kept in a separate envelope by themselves, according to the rules. Yes.
Mr. Macharia?
Yes, my lord.
You are still not answering the question.
Yes.
You walk into a polling booth.
Yes.
You're given 6 ballot papers.
Yes.
So you decide, as you may decide,
yes,
that you'll only vote for a presidential candidate.
Correct.
That leaves you with 5.
Yes.
Those 5 are not stray.
No.
They are unused.
Yes.
You've been given 6, but you have elected to use only 1.
Yes.
That leaves you with 5.
Yes.
What we are asking, where do those 5 go? How are they accounted for? It's a simple question.
Oh, yes.
They're not stray.
No, they're not stray.
They can only be stray if they have found themselves through in the wrong ballot box.
And that's the point.
Okay. So they're not stray. So you still remain with 5.
Yes.
Where do you put them? You carry them away?
No.
How are they accounted for?
No, and that's the point I'm making. You vote. You vote for 1, and vote for the 2nd, and vote for the 3rd. You have 6. Yes.
2 weeks later, for the very first time in the history of Africa, and only the 4th time in the world, the Supreme Court reached the dramatic verdict, throwing out the entire presidential election on, among other issues, a controversy over servers which the commission was accused of refusing to open despite the court's clear directives.
A declaration is hereby issued that the presidential election held on 8th August 2017 was not conducted in accordance with the Constitution and the applicable law, rendering the declared results invalid, null, and void. Number 2, a declaration is hereby issued that the 3rd respondent was not validly declared as the president-elect, and that the declaration is invalid, null, and void.
The nullification of the presidential vote was widely seen by some as a vindication of the claims by the Raila Odinga-led opposition that technology had been used to compromise the election and that Msando's death was somehow part of that scheme.
One thing I can assure you, and I've said this before, we worked with MOFO very closely. At no point did they give us passwords, or because the claims were that passwords were given to some of the officers or the late Chris had passwords. No password was given to any officer before the eve of the election.
But then again, it changed the whole environment, right? Because someone as senior as that, having his whole livelihood and his whole essence in terms of being an expert practitioner in that level, being taken away just like that. And, there are other people who died also, because of that particular incident, set a tone of we will do whatever it is that we want to do, and we will craft it as we would wish to, and there's nothing you'll do about it. And so you cascade that to the general Mwananchi, or rather, the everyday Wanjiku, and it raises eyebrows. It's a dangerous situation. It's very slippery. And up until today, we have not had any formidable, formal complaint made to any court of law, either national, regional, or international. That then tells you that no one is safe. In essence, whatever capacity you're holding, whether you're working for the state itself or not, then we would do whatever it is that we want to do, and there's no recuse for you in any legislative framework, be it national or regional. That's an alarming situation, and I would want that everyone feels the pinch, because we have more skin in the game than we like to admit. No one is safe. Even, a journalist, an expert like myself in human rights, anyone who vouches for right to life or security of the person, in essence, is exposed.
As the country grappled with the gravity of Msando's killing and its impact, it would emerge that the IEBC official had feared for his life and made reports to police several times. He showed friends and colleagues the chilling, threatening messages that he had received. And despite making official reports, no measures were taken to address his security concerns. In 2018, Msando's mother showed the media letters she had written to ambassadors of the US and UK asking for help in solving the puzzle of her son's death. In a January 28, 2018 letter to the US Embassy, she wrote, "We are now seeking for independent intervention of international investigators who had offered to help to unravel the killers of Chris." And in a January 29, 2018 letter to the British High Commissioner, she wrote, "We are disappointed at the slow pace this investigation has taken, with no one being prosecuted so far for this heinous crime. The release of the suspect so far arrested has dampened our spirits." Both US Ambassador at the time Robert Godek and British High Commissioner Nick Haley had replied with a similar message that they had offered to help investigate the murder, but they were not welcomed by the Kenyan government. And here is what the government spokesperson Eric Kiraithe had to say when that question was posed at him.
To call FBI and whatever, who else, and Mossad and whatever, it's very easy, but the government has no intention to use such actions to manage perception.
It remains unclear why the Kenyan government has never accepted any international help to assist in unraveling the murder of Chris Msando and Carol Ngumbu, despite the lack of progress in investigations by Kenyan detectives.
State complicity. Simple. The death was not a normal death. The circumstances under which she died were not easy to understand. And at the end of the day, there were no investigations. 2 words: state complicity.
In 2020, Dr. Roslina Kombe, a former IEBC commissioner, posted a tweet that suggested internal complicity at the commission in Chris Msando's murder, saying, "Painful that instead on this day 3 years ago, your own colleagues led you to the slaughterhouse. Like Judas, they sold you for 30 cents. The former commissioner has been dishing out a series of tweets within the last 5 years of Chris Msando's murder mystery. The recent one being Friday, July 28, 2022, exactly 5 years after the gruesome murder. Akombe tweeted that it's been 5 years since Chris Msando was handed to his brutal killers to thwart efforts of delivering a credible election in Kenya, and that though his betrayers have been rewarded and electoral integrity remains in peril, Akombe further tweets that justice will be served, no matter how long it takes. Akombe fled the country in October 2017, resigning mid-air just 8 days before a crucial repeat presidential election, citing threats to her life, a month after the annulment of the August 8, 2017 election results. Observers say the many clues given about the murder over the years should have led to a breakthrough by now.
You know, when you get into these murky things, like they say in politics, you better, mnasema kwa Kiswahili, yaliyopita si ndwele tugange ajabu, because if you touch it, you're going to touch raw nerves, and those raw nerves are willing to speak what they also know, maybe like what Sudi was saying, and then it will just implode from within, and it will just be a serious security problem for the country. Two words, state complicity, and that's why nothing was followed, no investigations, nobody was arrested, and nobody wanted to talk.
IEBC officials say election seasons such as this brings back the chilling memories of that gruesome yet unresolved murder.
Well, it's scary. Don't forget, I was the chair of ICT and I was working closly with Chris, and you feel, are you the next, you know? And I remember during that week, sometimes, you know, I just put off my phone. I don't even get any calls. Sometimes you don't sleep where you are sleeping. You just, so all the time you are looking over your shoulder. You know, it's very scary, and a lot of staff do feel scared, you know, by such when such incidents, unfortunate incidents happen.
If you look at even our staff in the commission, especially ICT and election, they are now frightened because of so many, you see in this, most of the media, I mean the press, the gutter press are, you see their photos on all of these gutter presses, social media posts.
Okay.
And it's coming at this time where now our staff are afraid. Don't forget, it was around this time on the 28th of July, 5 years ago, when our ICT staff was murdered. And this then becomes a very, very frightening moment.
You have to look over your shoulders all the time, and we avoid going to anybody. In fact, since I joined the commission, I have little friends that I visit. My work is office, house, office, house. Because if you go to a place and you are seen with a politician who happens to be your friend, then you become the talk of the town, that umeingia mfuko ya fulani, umeingia mrengo hii, mrengo ile. So personally, and I think my colleagues also feel so, the safest thing is, for the timing, let me shun my friends and remain or keep to yourself until the crazy season is over.
For Caroline Ngumbu's family, the government can yet do its duty of getting to the bottom of why someone would snuff life out of their daughter and get away with it.
The reason why wakukuja kwetu kutuelezea what happened, I don't know. And the least they would have done is at least hata kuita a public inquest whereby at least tungepata answers moja mbili, na pia wangeshindwa wangekuja watuambie, cause pia naamini si cases zote zinapatanga suluhisho.
The family insists that the failure to constitute even a public inquest spoke volumes about the government's possible knowledge of who may have killed the duo. The farthest the DCI went in investigating the murder of Chris Msando and Carol Ngumbu was to arrest Andrew Rono, an accountant at a state corporation, detaining him for 19 days before the court ordered for his release. Rono was Msando's landlord, and they had exchanged harsh words over 9 months before his murder. A 17-year-old pupil was also arrested in Migori with a phone that was reportedly used to send threatening messages to the ICT manager. The court ordered for her release since police could not link her to the phone or any wrongdoing. Police never paraded 3 people they claimed to have arrested in tracing Msando's last movements before his killing. The police account of his vehicle's movement remains disputed by several other accounts that the slain IEBC officer could have been waylaid by his killers. The murder of Chris Msando was not the only one that rocked the Electoral Commission in 2017. The body of a middle-aged female teacher who was a deputy presiding officer with the IEBC was discovered in a thicket at Sega Trading Center in Siaya County. The body was that of Miss Caroline Odiga, found by residents who were on their way to attend the burial of Chris Msando in Lifunga village. Her murder is yet to be fully investigated. With another election days away, the safety of the Electoral Commission's officials has come into sharp focus, especially with both sides of the political divide accusing the other of having insiders within IEBC or intimidating the commission. With the daunting task of delivering a credible election ahead, the ghosts of a Supreme Court judgment haunting it, several court rulings appearing to question its fairness, IEBC is racing against time to take Kenyans to another election. But for the family of Christopher Chege Msando and Caroline Marianne Wairimu Ngumbu, it's a different question. Where is justice for their kin 5 years on? Brian Obuya, NTV.